Hello, BookTube. We are back to the library tour from you know where, and we are in bookcase number 2. We are starting bookcase number 2. We're at base camp, we're at the bottom, and I think this bottom shelf will take 4 videos to do. Maybe more, but at least 4. So let's give a start here with this one. An author going by the pen name of Dale Forrest wrote a series of things called Slaves of the Empire. They were very slim, very easy, very pornographical Roman historical fiction. They had Boris Vallejo covers. And this is number 1, Barba the Slayer, the Slaver. Can't imagine what attracted me to that cover, but I have all of these somewhere. Then our next one is Musashi by Eiji Yoshikawa, it is a terrific book. I've opined many times before that it really needs better treatment than it gets. It has hardly had any English language translations. It hasn't had any deluxe editions or anything like that. It doesn't seem to be taken seriously as a work of Japanese literature, which surprises me. It has a fantastic origin story, lots of devoted fans, and once upon a time, 40 or 50 years ago, it came out as a series of mass-market paperbacks in the United States. There's also a big, oversized hardcover. But this is book number 1 of that series of mass-market paperbacks. This is Musashi, The Way of the Samurai. And you've got the illustrations here of characters from the book. And all 5 of the mass-market paperbacks have that same illustrated effect. They should all be here. Somewhere they should all be here. If they're not in this bookcase, I don't know where they would be. Then we have the classic mass market paperback of The Day of the Jackal by Frederick Forsyth. This classic design of these things that I just never really got over. I love the understatedness of it, and also the originally commissioned artwork with Charles de Gaulle's inimitable portrait, his inimitable profile right in the middle there. The granddaddy of modern thrillers, and really, really good. Okay, then we have I don't know what you would call this, a men's adventure novel, an international thriller. Men's adventure, probably closer. It's brilliant. It's by an author who is really brilliant and is now completely forgotten, unfortunately. This is by Stephen Becker, and this is called The Blue-Eyed Shan. About an expatriate who, goes to Graham Greene country and has adventures there. And it's big and brawling, but also beautifully written. Just a wonderful going native adventure story on the other side of the world, 60 years ago. It's terrific in a way that I don't really see anyone being terrific today, mining this exact same strip. But we're going to keep going. We're going to keep going here. So this next one is a mass market paperback of a James Michener novel, Alaska, one of his more effective novels. These, Once Upon a Time, came out in these big brick mass market paperbacks, and I loved them. I have quite a few of them. And I don't know, like a lot of the books that are on this bookcase, I don't know how much of the fact that I have this is just nostalgia. I've had hardcovers of this. They're way too unwieldy. I have ebooks of them, and they are perfect. An ebook is perfect for James Michener, a form of a book that he never even lived to see. They're perfect for his work. His works are huge. They're 1,000 pages. So how long is this thing? How long is Alaska? Just out of curiosity. Yeah, it's 1,070 pages. An ebook is perfect for this. So I don't know how much of the fact that I have this thing that I'm holding in my hand is nostalgia. I am, in other words, not sure with a lot of the books on this bookcase. I'm not sure that I would ever actually read this. The book, yes. This book, I don't know. I don't know that I ever would. Then we have Robert de Maria. This is an old Roman historical novel. This is Clodia. It's really, really good. It's about the Rome of the infamous Clodia, the infamous Lesbia. So this is a Rome of Catullus and the imperial palace, and a period that is well covered by the literature and the history of the period. So it's easily possible to put a lot of detail in here that you would only be guessing at if you tried other periods in Roman history. And it's delightful. I don't know why. I don't know anything about Robert DeMaria, and I don't know why this book has been forgotten. But I loved it, and so I grabbed and reinforced a second copy when I saw one, because I have access to the Brattle Bookstore here in Boston, and one of the only places I know of where you can be confident of finding a second copy of something like this. Although at the Brattle, a second mass market paperback copy of The Blue-Eyed Shawn has never turned up that I've seen. I think I had a hardcover from the shop once, but it was in terrible shape. What is next here? Oh, okay. All right, this is a huge historical novel. One of these things that were half inspired by The Bastard by John Jakes, which is behind me on the desk there, and half inspired by a handful of other books. You could have a big breakout hit along the lines of writing a gigantic, sprawling historical novel. I think that partially inspired Stephen Becker, although he ended up doing a far brainier job than he needed to. And this is a perfect example. The critics were just baffled when this thing came out, saying, okay, it's big and it's sprawling, but there's nothing there. It's just air. This is Anthony Adverse. It's just the poor author doesn't even, his name is in the fine print on the cover, because this is just meant to be. They all had covers like this too, by this artist whose name I do not remember. I think we've already seen his work twice here, but I don't know that it's ever credited on these books. No, this is reprinted. This is, of course, a reprint, because Anthony Adverse came out a long time ago. But this, I don't know who this guy is. I wish I knew his name. He did just a spread of artwork along the front and back and spine, and he did a lot of covers. I'm sure we're going to see him many, many times. And this is just a big potboily historical adventure story, perfect for half a dozen booktube events. Let's see here. Oh, okay, great. This is, I think this was the last time this author ever appeared in mass market paperback. This is Mario Vargas Llosa, the great Mario Vargas Llosa, and this is his book, Aunt Julia and the Scriptwriter, which is wonderful. This is an old mass market paperback. I once had this in a trade paperback as well, and I've had this in hardcover, and I've had it in Spanish, and I have the ebook. So I don't know that I would ever read this thing again. When did this thing come out? Tia Julia y el Escritorio. 1982. This came out in 1982. And I'd keep it, but I think I'd probably keep it for nostalgic reasons. I mean, it's a wonderful book. It does with things with so-called natural realism, which is a gimmick in fiction that usually really annoys me. It does it really well. Probably I give it a lot more leeway because it does it in the context of writing and telling stories. Okay, then we have a historical novelist. This thing has seen better days. I don't know that I would actually pick this up and read it from front to back. I'm not sure how much it would survive that. The whole attrition that I have with mass market paperbacks is because they don't survive it. This is Burr by Gore Vidal, an old paperback of Burr by Gore Vidal, a historical novel about Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton and the first generation of America as a country. Gore Vidal ended up writing a lot of historical fiction, but in terms of his endless penchant for writing historical fiction set in different periods of American history, this is probably the most successful one, I would think. I mean, there are bits and pieces of Hollywood, a novel called Hollywood, that are really, really good, surprisingly good by that point in his career. But this is just sustainedly good. So I don't know. I don't call it his best historical fiction because he wrote historical fiction that didn't have to do with America. He wrote a novel called Julian and a novel called Creation, both of which should be turning up here on this bookcase, that are better than Burr. But Burr is still really good. Okay, then we have Keith Miles and David Butler. This is a novel that was flushed into the mainstream. It was flushed into the market because at the time there was a miniseries. There's been at least one other miniseries on this character. This is their book Marco Polo. Again, with this just opulent cover artwork, just the original cover artwork. I don't know if this is going to give me any of the credits for the show. A novel by Keith Miles and David Butler based on the screenplay by David Butler and 2 other people for the show, the NBC miniseries, which was directed by Giuliano Montaldo. Yeah, this doesn't tell me actually anything about the cast. So I quite don't remember the name of the young man who plays Marco Polo in this miniseries. And there was a later miniseries where an even younger and prettier man plays Marco Polo. That's not exactly too much of a liberty. Marco Polo did travel with his uncles to the far end of the world when he was a young man, when he was a super hottie teenager. So that's not, Hollywood taking license, as they recently did when they cast a young and beautiful, slim woman as Queen Victoria. This is pure nostalgia, of course. I have a big sweet spot for Marco Polo, anything to do with Marco Polo. I have some adventure novels that somebody wrote, a series of adventure novels about Marco Polo. They should be here somewhere. Okay, all right. This is just a little mass market paperback of A Christmas Carol. Just a tiny little thing there, nothing to it at all. Oh, great. Oh my. Okay. All right. This one is also an author who has largely disappeared. She had a heyday. This book was the pinnacle of that heyday. But she had lots and lots of other books. I'm trying to get the smudge off this stuff. The author is Pauline Gedge, who's now, I think, largely forgotten. And she's written a lot of fiction set in ancient Egypt. And this is her best book. This is The Child of the Morning. Look at that cover. Look at that. That is just incredible. Again, this is Hollywood licensed. This is a novel about Hatshepsut, and that's not what Hatshepsut looked like at all. But nevertheless, this is just terrific. Little bit on the stodgy side in terms of exposition dumps, but terrific. And the only Pauline Gedge I have. I think it's the only Pauline Gedge I have. All right. But we're gonna move on here. This next one is, I showed you this already. This is a mass market that I got just last year, I think, or earlier this year. I think it was just last year. This is Walker Percy, The Last Gentleman. This author his novels have somewhat baffled me. Most of them have somewhat baffled me. This one does too. You've got I found a couple of these with this kind of cover design, so I grabbed them both to give them another try. I haven't done that yet, mainly because I wonder about how much of a read this thing can take. But I shouldn't worry about that, because if I'm reading it, and I'm not trying to be brutal to it, if I'm just reading it and it falls apart, well, then it fell apart. These things weren't made to last forever. They weren't made to last a year. But you've got a guy there with a telescope pointed into Central Park, and that's the plot here. Beginning in Central Park, where a young man peers through his telescope at a beautiful young woman and falls in love at first sight, and ending thousands of miles and many extravagant adventures later in a blinding moment of truth in Santa Fe. That's genuine creepy behavior. And it isn't even blinked at. It's just, you take it in your stride for this book. Okay, and then we'll finish up this first shelf. So this was fairly painless. We'll finish up this first shelf with a mass market paperback. Again, this is, again, there's schmutz on here. You don't get schmutz on the cover of an ebook, now do you? This is a mass market paperback of a great novel, one of the great novels of the 20th century, and I honestly don't know that I would read it. I don't know that it would survive a reading. It did once upon a time, not this particular one, but my first reading of this book was in this exact kind of mass market paperback. This is Earthly Powers by Anthony Burgess. His great big novel about basically a friendship between two very different men as they go through their lives. And their lives happen to be a prism through which you can see the whole of the first 2/3 of the 20th century. Everything is in this book. Just everything. Oh my God. And yet it is so perfectly controlled with passages that I don't know. I am a big fan of Anthony Burgess, but I know perfectly well that he spent a lot of his published career, a lot of his published works, eloquently spinning wheels and refusing to let what he was writing get its hooks in him. He was always concerned with getting hooks in you, the reader, but almost never concerned with or worried about or allowing the things he was writing to get their hooks in him. And this does. There are passages in here on the nature of evil. Oh my, you'll never forget them. But I don't know, again, this will be the theme of this shelf. I don't know that I would ever read this. So why do I have it? I have a trade paperback of this that would certainly take a better read. I have a big hardcover that has the equally featureless cover. And I have the ebook. So I don't know. I don't know why I have this. I guess that maybe applies to the whole of this bookcase. We will see. Some of these I can understand because some of these mass market paperbacks that I'll show you do not have e-copies. They don't exist in any other form. Maybe their hardcovers you might be able to find them for a king's ransom, but probably not. Some of these things didn't have hardcovers, so they don't have a hardcover and they don't have an e-copy. Then you've got to have the mass market if you want them at all. But we will see. We have a long, long way to go. So that was just one part of the first shelf of bookcase number 2. So we'll move on next time. Thank you, BookTube.